Philosophy House in Wellington's Aro Valley, offering all sorts of discussions and courses for people seeking the answers to life's bigger questions. But some people find their church is the place for philosophical debate. Derek McCullough, my guest this week, found that Unitarianism gives him both a philosophy and a practical approach to life. He describes Unitarianism as being big on deeds, not creeds. Derek's journey to Unitarianism began in the 1970s, when he found himself on the road with an extraordinary rock legend, New Zealand's Blurta.
I just happened to live around the corner from Bruno Lawrence and Jeff Murphy in the crowd, and we were all big footy fans, and it was just one afternoon, Saturday, down to Athletic Park, and Bruno saw this bus parked and went off on this big rave about a sort of a merry prankster thing of getting musos and theatre people together and touring the country. That's where it was, and yeah, it went from there.
Bit of an icon really now, Blurta, isn't it?
Yeah, it did become that. I mean, at the time, it was just a group of people thinking they were going to have fun, and didn't really have that much significance. But, yeah, as you say, it certainly grew over the years, as legends do. And it was also an opportunity for me as a young journalism student to do a bit of writing. I was their sort of PR man and did a bit of that and a bit of photography as well. So, yeah, there was some skill-based stuff, but mainly just, hey, this is a good time.
You toured with them a couple of times?
Yeah, did the first tour up around Wairarapa, Fielding Way, and then started with them on the tour of the South Island. Did Blenheim and Nelson. And at that point I left because I was off to the United States, and they went on and caused further mayhem further south.
As a lapsed Anglican, looking back, would you say there's some kind of spirituality within the kind of whole Blurta scene that you're attracted to?
I wouldn't have recognised it at the time, being well lapsed. As I said, probably from time of confirmation on, found my connection to Anglicanism was very tenuous, to being almost non-existent. But there's certainly, in terms of developing community, having a common ethic, that sort of thing, yeah, it did have its own spiritual sort of circumference.
It was later on in the States that you really found yourself looking to find some kind of appropriate place for religion and spirituality in your own life.
Yeah, as with a lot of people, by then had a couple of kids, young kids, and came across this Unitarian church, and it was just amazing. And actually that's a common descriptor of Unitarians as atheists with kids. You know,
right.
People that had no need for any spiritual use until children come along and realise that, yeah, there could be something to it. So we became quite involved in the local Elliott Chapel Unitarian church.
What was it you were looking for your children?
As much as anything, just broadening the framework in which they were living. I mean, it sounds awfully sort of well thought out. At the time, it was just a place that would continue their curiosity, their zest for life, that sort of thing. And I remember the first day that Caleb came back from a Unitarian chapel, and you know, I asked him, what are they doing? And the first term's theme was houses. And we thought, oh, this sounds good. And he said, and we have to take a pillowcase next week. I was thinking, well, what's this about? And he said, well, you know, the womb is the first house we're in. And they were all going to crawl out of this pillowcase, and that was going to be their first house. And I thought, this is creative sort of religious education or religious exploration.
You meet for, is worship the right word, on a weekly basis?
Yeah, it's one thing that Unitarians do struggle with the language.
Yeah.
You know, there's a great sort of story about Unitarians are bad singers because they're always reading the next line to see if they fit theologically before they can say it, you know. And so words like God and church and worship, a lot of Unitarians struggle with. We tend to call our places meeting houses rather than churches. But if you look at the origin of worship, which is worthship, in other words, giving reverence to what we find worthy, then yeah, we do worship. I don't have any struggle with that word. But we get together on Sundays, which is, again, a very traditional time for religious groups to get together. And our services take about an hour and involve conversation as little ritual. We light a candle, or a chalice as we call it, to start the service.
To light this for the welcoming our grandson Rory, who's visiting us for 5 days, and for our upcoming immigration of our daughter from California, who'll be here in a week or so, with her husband and 2 children.
We have a ritual called Candles of Community, where you light a candle and express a joy or a concern that you're dealing with at that time, and it's a chance for the rest of the group to have empathy and to
offer some support.
Offer some support.
I would just like to light a candle for this glorious day.
It's a bit ironic, really, in that one of the things that Unitarians often say is, beware the man with one book. And yet I've based today's service pretty much on the readings of a book. And the reason is that it's one that's got a lot of wisdom in it from various sources. And I just thought... Sometimes I do a sermon. Often we have a lot of interactive stuff. In fact, recently we made a new tablecloth. That was the theme of the service, and anyone coming along for the first time would have thought Unitarianism was some sort of craft group,
an embroidery group,
embroidery group, whatever. But so, and along with guest speakers, that sort of thing. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
In a traditional Christian context, a sermon would be a proclamation of the word, a teasing out of the Bible text. What's a sermon like in the Unitarian service? I'd
probably be more in the way of a talk to U3A. It's something that I find interesting at the time, or that is facing the group, or that I think they'll find interesting, and it'll be my take on it. And often, in most cases, it involves a question and answer series afterwards, because just because I say it doesn't mean that it holds any...
Nobody has to buy the product.
They don't have to buy the product at all. And often the sermon is actually the shorter part of the service, and the conversation that follows that forms the bulk of it, because Unitarians do like to talk.
One of my core values as a Unitarian is respect for each of you in your individual search for truth. If I think that I am wiser, but you feel that you are right, we don't need a fight to settle what is black and what is white, since we both can share in searching for the truth behind the words, like the sky that's always present as a background to the birds.
Notwithstanding what you're saying about hymns, you do sing hymns as well.
Yes, yeah, we call them songs, but they are hymns in that sense. In fact, in our group we have a prolific hymn writer, Bill Wallace. Right. And yeah, we like to sing. There's an awful lot of good music that's inspirational, and I think music forms a big part of being able to connect with the spiritual self.
Most of us watching this show will have no idea what Unitarianism is, let alone Unitarian Universalism. Can you set the scene for us a bit?
As an idea, it really came into force at the Council of Nicaea in 325, when sort of Christian theology became law, when the triune God was determined to be
defined as a Trinitarian entity.
This is the nature of God. And a lot of people at that point thought, sort of, where did you get this from? And pretty much went underground at that point. And it wasn't really until the Reformation and the Enlightenment period when liberal religious people started to question this. And one of our earlier people, a guy called Michael Servetus, a Spaniard, wrote a book called On the Errors of the Trinity, where he outlined that it was actually getting in the way of good Christian practice. And he was burnt at the stake by John Calvin. So, and
it's one response to criticism.
Yes, yes. And Unitarian thought was closely aligned really to the scientific period at that same time. And there's quite a lot of the early sort of scientists, people like Isaac Newton was a Unitarian, and Charles Darwin, of course, was a Unitarian minister, and Joseph Priestley, the guy that discovered oxygen. He was actually a Unitarian minister, and because of his Unitarian views, the Orthodox Birmingham people burned his labs down. So he went to the United States and set up Unitarian churches in Pennsylvania, and that's really where the strength of the movement lies now, although there are Unitarians in India and Poland and all through Europe, Transylvania. And so, yeah, that's it. As I said, the correlation between a curious mind that wants to question science and a curious mind that wants to question theology is very close.
Do Unitarians throughout the country get together at all?
In a formal sense, we get together every 2 years for our ANZUA conferences, Australia New Zealand Unitarian Association. The UU organisation is really like an interfaith group in itself, in that there is the UU pagans and the UU Christians, the UU Jews. The Buddhists are very strong in the UU movement, so we have the UU Buddhism. And of course the Universalists are there, and they'll put on a workshop, say, is Hitler in heaven? Which,
That'd bring them out, yeah.
It brings them out, it's a full one. And it's discussing the idea of eternal damnation and sin, and bringing it back to whether, if Hitler's there as your maths teacher that you hated, is he there with him? And then kind of brings it back to a more personal level, but it's great. I love it. Go in peace. And we follow with Unitarian communion, which is coffee and tea and conversation.
Hey, look at that.
I'm always interested in the way a person's spiritual understanding, if you like, connects with their everyday life. Does it make a difference or does it not? You mentioned you've been an event manager.
Yeah, it's a bit of chicken and egg in the sense that I'm not sure that when I'm deciding to do something, I go through a sort of Unitarian checklist to see if it fits. But I do know that the way I conduct or the way I do things is very Unitarian in its sense. But yeah, I started out, or spent some time managing or designing events. Oddly enough, my first sort of success was one called Blues, Brews and Barbecues.
Ah.
Great Trinity, if there
Yes,
ever was
absolutely,
one.
yes.
It's very Unitarian.
Marriage made in heaven.
But I remember one particular event went rather badly, and I ended up owing a lot of money afterwards. And I just went round to everybody and said, look, I'm not leaving town, you will get your money. It may not arrive tomorrow, but you will get it. And every time I delivered a cheque or a part payment, it would be wrapped around a jar of barbecue sauce.
Right.
And what I found was that the next time I wanted to set something up, every single contractor had no qualms about saying full support. And you realise then that just having an integral way of doing your business is what really counts.
I know that you're a barbecue chef. You're an international barbecue judge.
Yes, yeah, that's another sort of past lifetime that I used to have a barbecue restaurant in Christchurch, and the organisers of the World Barbecue Championships were in town and ate at the restaurant, and I did them a freshly caught Rakaya salmon over Manuka. I mean, really, they didn't have a chance. I feel pity for them, really. So they immediately said, would you like to come to our festival as a judge? And not being one to give up an opportunity, I went over there as first year as a judge, and then I've taken the New Zealand barbecue team to the World Champs twice now to compete.
And you've had a program on CTV, Christchurch Television.
Yes. On the Spit with Derek.
On the Spit with Derek.
That's right. Yeah.
Some religions, are a bit ascetic in character and don't, go in too much for indulgent celebration of things like food and drink. Clearly, that's not a problem for you.
No, not me or a you. I don't think. No. I think enjoying life is a huge part of living a good life. The simple pleasures, eating, drinking, having friends, are the basis of a spiritual existence. And so we certainly don't see pleasure as sinful, as long as it's responsible and done with reason and integrity. Then pleasure's a very good part of being human.
Pleasure's part of what it's about.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's good. So you worked in events management for a while, Derek. Is there any particular reason you got out?
Yeah, I sort of finished my event management career when I was working at Jade Stadium, or I was there at Lancaster Park through to Jade Stadium, and I found that it was difficult for me to justify some of the expenses that were being outlaid for corporate entertainment, for signage, and realising that Rebecca, my wife, who works in the Pacific with disabled people, could probably fund a school for a year on the amount that some of these people would spend eating and drinking in one night. And after a while that gets to you. You just think there's a balance that's out of whack here.
Tell us more about her work.
Rebecca works in the field of disabilities, and particularly in the last few years has found a lot of work needs to be done in the South Pacific, or in the Pacific. She worked for a group called Inclusion International, which oddly enough has very similar sort of mission statement to Unitarians, and it involves accepting the worth and dignity of all people. And if you think that there are people that are disadvantaged in this world, then to get to the bottom of the heap, you go to the physically and intellectually disabled people in third world countries. And so that's where she has found her calling, as it were. The sun comes out of that ocean in the east and it just hits it flat on, and they just lift up.
You've got 2 children, 2 boys, but you've got some relationships with other children as well.
Yes, just accumulate children, it seems like. That sounds odd, doesn't it? Yeah. No, all through different circumstances. Just found that I was in a position to be able to lend a hand in a parental role, and so took that opportunity and found that from my own 2 kids, now it's up to about 10 or 12.
How does that happen, Derek? Tell us a bit more.
Well, there was one particular family where there was a breakup, and the mother was struggling with 4 young kids by herself, so we just bundled them up and took them home and sort of had fun with them, and they enjoyed coming to our place. So that over the sort of 10 years turned into being their sort of parental support people, right. I suppose. Right. I've got a young man that our family have looked after who's has autism, and we've integrated him into our family over the years as well. And it's just one of these things, you meet people, you like them, they stick around. Rebecca works in that field, and so would often be connected to families and get to know them. And both my boys worked as caregivers through university and things like that. And then when they left, there was suddenly sort of a gap that I seemed to step into. All right. Hey, Chris? There's a mixed ability dance troupe in Christchurch called Jolt that I'm involved in both as a trustee and as the caregiver. Chris goes to dance every Monday night. We have a great time. Burger King and dance. Right. Absolutely love it. The last group that would be the Kurdish refugee family that were Unitarian group sponsored.
You well?
Yes, I am fine. Thank
Good?
you.
Yeah?
How about you?
Well, I have a bit of a cough, but I'm okay.
No worries.
No worries. Mishkalin. Mishkalin, yeah. Okay, Derek, where are you? Happy birthday to you. Sing, you guys. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
Big day for kids in the New Zealand cultural calendar, of course, is Christmas. What do Unitarians do about Christmas and Easter?
Well, they do all sorts of things, really. A lot of them, the more Christian Unitarians, actually have Christmas.
Right.
We are a more humanist sort of aligned group, and we tend to have worked towards solstices, and so we celebrate the summer solstice, the winter solstice, and the equinoxes as guidelines to what the Christian themes are all about. Renewal in springtime is very much a resurrection at Easter type thing.
Right.
It's nice to see you all here and to celebrate.
Okay, that's good.
That's it, to celebrate. No, but good times, good family, good food. That's all there is to it, really. And to be grateful for the opportunity to be able to share these things, because we don't always get that chance. Probably our biggest day of the year would be All Heretics Day.
All Heretics Day.
All Heretics Day, yeah. Our religious foundation is out of heresy. We take the word heresy, which is from the Greek word to choose, and it means nothing more than the religious freedom, being able to choose your faith. And we celebrate that by All Heretics Day.
So heretics which is a pejorative word, I guess, for most of the culture, is a positive, affirming word for you.
Very much so, very much so. Yeah, I think freedom of choice in religious matters is at the heart of our faith.
So what day of the year does All Heretics Day fall?
It's the first Sunday in April, closest day to April Fool's Day.
No irony there, I presume?
No, not at all. No, we just think that questioning and the noble fool is all part of it. We generally get in a guest speaker. The second All Heretics Day lecturer was Lloyd Gearing.
Right.
And he talked on the fact that it's now coming up 40 years.
That's right, this year.
Since his heresy trial. He had a wonderful line to finish it. He said, of course, I feel a bit of a fraud being here on All Heretics Day because I was acquitted.
It's very true.
He said, I'm not a real heretic like... He talked about Francesco Bruno, who had an iron spike driven through his tongue for speaking what we now take as self-evident truths. I believe evolution, from the Big Bang, 13.7 billion years ago, although bang is not a term I like, but the emergence of our universe at that time and its expanding nature and its diversity, complexity. We are just part of that universe. We are a wonderful, self-reverential part of that.
What status do you give the Bible?
It's one book that has served humans extraordinarily well over the years, and it's a wonderful cultural history of the Jewish tribe, but we don't hold it as the reverent all-truth.
Right.
It is just part of what makes up our wisdom traditions.
I guess the follow-up question to that is, who do you understand Jesus of Nazareth to be?
Well, that's my
Your
personal...
own personal view.
Yeah, I would never...
You wouldn't dare dream of speaking for everyone.
On behalf of all Unitarians in this matter. But for me, Jesus was a remarkable human being with a radical philosophy of his time, the philosophy of love, the philosophy of compassion, and has had an extraordinary influence on human endeavours ever since. So we believe the message of Jesus, the philosophy of Jesus, or at least I do, but not the history of the man. I don't believe he was divine. I don't believe he was the only Son of God. I think he was just one extraordinarily gifted human teacher.
Do you have a meaning yourself or a belief in relation to the word God?
To me, God is probably a term that sums up the ultimate mystery. It is that which we don't know. And we, being questioners, being curious seekers, look to try and get as much information about that as we can. And that involves the words and deeds of wonderful and courageous people like Jesus, scientific truth, our own reason, our own intelligence to be able to determine what we believe is true.
Let's talk for a little bit about death. How do you, Derek McCullough, how do you understand death and whatever may or may not be beyond?
Well, I probably think that, well, I do think that when we die, our physical bodies die and we go back into the earth and we are part of that cycle. The same atoms that are in my body were at the Big Bang, that there is just something about that. But I think that almost in a reincarnation sense, our DNA just lives on, and so in a physical sense, we do have everlasting life, if we have children, that is. In a non-physical way, I think the memory that we leave people with, of us, is also to a degree everlasting. So that is probably where heaven and hell come into it. If you've been a ratbag your whole life, then people are going to think, they're not going to have a very high opinion of you, and that's probably hell. But if you have lived a compassionate and loving and truthful, probably foibled life, we've all made the mistakes, but then ongoing will be the sense of goodwill, the sense of, of people looking back on your life as with pleasure and with love. I grew up in a time in the 60s and 70s when there was a lot of people at my age heading off to India and exploring all sorts of spiritual values. And a lot of them I felt in harmony with, but I just felt that I didn't feel comfortable in foreign culture's sort of way of expressing it. And the thing I like about Unitarianism is that I can wear my own cultural clothes, as it were, and still have this universal spirituality. We think that the thing that binds us together, the religiosity of it, is the way we live, our character and what we do. Deeds, not creeds. And so things like compassion and character are universal across all faiths, and doctrine really doesn't play a part in what keeps us together. And that allows for an enormous diversity within our own movement, but held together by an ethical framework rather than a dogmatic framework.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.